the first longboard I've ever owned, so I honestly don't have a lot of experience with them. I've never been a big fan of longboards, but with these big 90mm wheels, this drop-through deck just seems like such a good fit, I had to give it a shot. Right from the start, I have to say I'm impressed with this board, which will be explained more throughout this video. I'll go over how it's put together, how it performs, and finally how much it all costs. Let's start with a quick look at the build. Using this drop-through deck, there's plenty of clearance under the board for the electronics and battery, while still keeping the ride height close to a standard skateboard. For cruising, it's kind of the best of both worlds. Big wheels for a smoother ride and a lower ride height for better handling. You can even do a bit of off-roading. For the deck, I used a 36-inch 8-ply bamboo drop-through deck I got from a site called skateshred.com. The deck has a decent amount of flex. It's less than a boosted board or some other longboards, but enough to make the ride smoother. This board was pretty easy to put together. It's similar to the other boards I've built and uses my trusty sandwich containers. For the grip tape, I used this rubbery, non-abrasive grip tape made by a company called DKL. I think it's a really good concept, especially for electric skateboards and cruisers, because it makes carrying the board much easier on your fingers, clothes, and shoes. The only problem is it tends to peel back on the edges after the board's been sitting a while. I got these 90mm motors and wheels from a seller that goes by eboard-shop on eBay. It's the same guy I bought this ESC and several other ESCs from. I'm pretty sure these are the same motors used on the Meepo board and some other pre-built boards I've seen online. They're very solid and seem well made. This ESC is a newer revision of the same one I used in my previous budget build. I basically installed it the same way as before, with 4 screws to hold the container on the board and 4 more screws with extra washers to attach the ESC. I also repeated the same 1/2-inch holes for the motor wires and the power switch. For the battery, I tried to keep things very simple. I couldn't use my usual sandwich containers because these 5S batteries are too long. To connect the batteries, I used the same style slots as my last board, only this time there's 2 of them to run the wires for each battery. I run both the power and balance charge wires into the container to avoid having the connectors exposed to the outside. I used some aluminum strips, small straps, and Velcro to hold the battery in place. The Velcro under the battery helps to keep it from sliding around, and another Velcro strip on the sides keep the ends of the straps from flapping around. To power the board, I connect both batteries to a series connector that I plug into the ESC. The setup I have here has been working well so far, but in the future I might look into creating an enclosure that's a bit more solid. For a board this size, the weight isn't bad. It weighs in at 14.83 pounds, which is still a bit lighter than many other boards. As usual, the motors are definitely the heaviest part. Now let's do some tests to see how this thing performs. Here I'm accelerating hard, then braking. With these 90mm motors and 10S voltage, this thing is fast and powerful, more than any other board I've owned. The board has a fast and slow speed mode that's controlled with the switch on the back of the remote. Now let's start with a fast mode test. So I'm at my usual speed test road. Alright, that's pretty fast. Now I'm going to test it out in slow mode. So now to put it in slow mode, I just flip the switch. ESC limits the RPM, so when the board hits full speed, there's a bit of a feeling similar to a rev limiter on a car, where the speed bounces a bit at the limit, which can be kinda scary at full speed. But because the speed is limited, it'll still easily hit 21 miles an hour even when the battery is less charged after many miles of riding. For me, 21 miles an hour is probably faster than I'd regularly go on a skateboard. To be safe, I think as a rule of thumb, it's best to not go faster than you can run off the board, in case you need to jump off. I haven't tested it, but even jumping off at 17 or 18 miles an hour would be scary. I didn't think I'd use the slow mode much, but I'm surprised at how useful it's been. In slow mode, I don't need to worry about carefully accelerating and bracing myself for acceleration. I can just crank it to full throttle and the board gently gets up to speed. The 10 mile an hour max speed is great for riding on sidewalks or cruising and carving down smooth streets. I think it works really well with the style of a longboard. Even at slower speeds, the higher voltage and powerful motors really help to maintain a smooth ride while easily getting over bumps and ramps. Now let's see how it does on my usual hill test. It's a relatively steep hill followed by a more gradual one. Alright, so I have the board in fast mode and I'm going to see how fast I can make it up that hill. Well, that was pretty fast. Now I'll go back down the hills to test the brakes. So now I'm coasting down the hill. Tiny bit of brake. And braking just a little bit. Now full brake. A little bit of brake. Now I'm going to do full braking just to see how much I can slow down. It gets pretty slow. Not quite a full stop. Now I'm coasting again. The braking isn't bad. It's pretty strong and can usually slow me down fast enough. At high speed or very steep hills, I sometimes do wish it was a bit more powerful, but that's more or less the case with all the hub motor boards I've used. Here I'm getting back from a ride to test the range a bit. I got the batteries hooked up now. So that was after about 7.6 miles. I have to say the ride on this board feels so smooth compared to my short boards. This board isn't too flexy, but has enough to feel the difference. Along with the big 90mm wheels, it really is more fun than I expected for cruising around. I do wish I had a kicktail sometimes though. Fortunately, the area behind the truck still provides enough room to flip the board up and grab it. You can also use the tiny tail to turn the board around with your foot. You can even almost turn it like a tail, but it's not so easy and you'll probably get shoe wheel bites. Now let's see how much this all costs. As usual, I'll have links to all the components in the description. While it's still not my daily driver, I find myself wanting to ride this board more than I expected. The large deck, smooth ride, and slow speed option make it a great choice for all skill levels. For beginners, you can practice cruising in slow mode, and when you're ready, just flip the switch and go scary fast. hope this video was helpful and shows more of the many possibilities when building your own electric skateboard. Feel free to leave any comments or questions about this build. Thanks for watching.